Without Littlefinger and Ramsay and the rest, I would have stayed a little bird all my life.
What happens when you survive the absolute worst the universe has to throw at you? But you realize you can never go back to being the person you were before the fire. In Season 8, Episode 4 of Game of Thrones, humanity has just survived the long night. There is a massive, roaring celebration happening in the Great Hall of Winterfell. Everyone is drinking, laughing, and celebrating the fact that they are still breathing. But if you look closely at the edges of the room, the people who have suffered the most are sitting in the dark. Sandor Clegane, the Hound, is isolating himself. He is a man built entirely out of rage and burned tissue. And then, a woman approaches him. Sansa Stark doesn't flinch. She doesn't tremble. She walks right up to the man who used to terrify her, sits down, and delivers one of the most profound psychological statements in the entire series. Today, we are throwing away standard television reviews. We are going to sit at this table and break down this reunion, dialogue by exact dialogue. We will explore highly advanced behavioral frameworks like post-traumatic growth and somatic empathy. And I will share the exact psychological literature where these concepts originate so you can see how they apply to the real world. We will unlock the strange, suppressed book lore regarding a phantom memory known as the Unkiss. And we will reveal exactly why Sansa Stark had to look her oldest demon in the eye. Grab a drink and pull up a chair. Let's look at what happens when two survivors examine the wreckage of their lives. To truly feel the emotional gravity in this room, we have to evaluate the mindset of the people sitting at this table. For the first time in her entire life, Sansa Stark is completely safe. Ramsay Bolton is dead. Peter Baelish has a slit throat. The Night King is shattered ice. Sansa is the Lady of Winterfell. She holds absolute authority. But trauma is a strange, heavy inheritance. While the rest of the hall is getting drunk and flirting, Sansa notices Sandor Clegane sitting alone. Years ago in King's Landing, Sandor was the physical embodiment of the terror surrounding her. He was Joffrey's attack dog. He was massive, scarred, and prone to violence. But ironically, he was also the only person in the capital who told her the truth about the world. Sansa approaches him now, not out of pity, but out of a deep psychological need to close an open loop. She needs to show the man who knew her as a terrified captive exactly what she has become. The interaction begins with Sansa making a deliberate, voluntary approach toward a former source of fear.
She could have made you happy for a little while.
To understand what Sansa is doing here, we can look at the work of psychoanalyst Otto Finkel. In his 1945 book, The Psychoanalytic Theory of Neurosis, he outlines a concept known as the counterphobic attitude. This is a psychological response where a person deliberately seeks out the exact situation or person that used to frighten them. They do this to prove to their own nervous system that they have mastered the fear. By walking up to Sandor and commenting on a girl who just left him, Sansa is actively probing his emotional state. She is testing his capacity for human connection.
There's only one thing that'll make me happy.
Sandor immediately deflects the vulnerability. He retreats into his armor. He hints at his lifelong consuming obsession, killing his brother, the Mountain.
What's that?
Sansa doesn't let him retreat. She presses the issue. The old Sansa, the little bird, would have looked down and apologized for prying. The new Sansa demands the answer.
That's my fucking business.
Sandor responds with pure, abrasive hostility. He curses at her, trying to shock her into leaving the table. But look at the stage direction. Sansa returns his brush off with silence. She sits in the verbal violence and completely absorbs it. She proves that his harshness has absolutely zero effect on her pulse rate. The counterphobic test is complete. She is entirely immune to his intimidation. Sandor, realizing that his aggression didn't work, changes tactics. He brings up the darkest chapters of her life to see if she will finally flinch.
Used to be you couldn't look at me.
He highlights the behavioral shift. He reminds her of the terrified, trembling girl in King's Landing who couldn't look at his burned face without feeling physically sick. He is testing her current psychological baseline.
That was a long time ago. I've seen much worse than you since then.
This is a devastating, brilliant response. Sansa acknowledges his monstrous appearance, but she officially downgrades his threat level. She casually informs him that the horrors she survived make his scarred face look like a minor inconvenience.
Yes, I've heard. And you were broken in rough.
This is incredibly vicious. In her groundbreaking 1992 book, Trauma and Recovery, Dr. Judith Herman discusses how survivors are often subjected to trauma probing by people trying to gauge their fragility. Sandor brings up Ramsay Bolton. He brings up the sexual violence she endured. And look at his vocabulary. Broken in. He uses the language of taming a wild horse. He is deliberately using vulgar, triggering words because he wants to see if the polished, regal Lady of Winterfell will break down and cry. He is aggressively auditing her emotional resilience. Sansa does not cry. She does not look away. She leans directly into the violence.
He got what he deserved. I gave it to him.
This is the moment Sandor's worldview shatters. I gave it to him. Sansa claims absolute ownership of her revenge. She does not say Jon Snow killed him. She does not say the army killed him. She forces Sandor to recognize that she is the executioner.
Oh.
Hounds.
Sandor is genuinely curious. He asks for the methodology of the execution. Sansa replies with a single word: hounds. The poetic irony here is breathtaking. Sandor is the Hound. Joffrey used him to terrorize Sansa, and years later, Sansa used literal hounds to tear apart her greatest abuser. She mastered the weapon that used to haunt her.
You've changed, little bird.
He chuckles. This is a laugh of profound, genuine respect. He uses her old nickname, Little Bird, but he doesn't use it to mock her. He uses it to highlight the massive paradigm shift that has occurred. The fragile songbird from the Red Keep has evolved into a bird of prey. The Hound respects lethality, and he just realized he is sitting across from an equal. Sandor, recognizing her strength, suddenly lets his own armor slip. He reveals the heavy guilt he has been carrying for years.
None of it would have happened if you left King's Landing with me.
Sandor brings up the Night of the Blackwater. He offered to smuggle her out of the city, and she refused. He is expressing profound, lingering guilt. He believes that his failure to rescue her directly resulted in her subsequent torture at the hands of the Boltons.
No Littlefinger, no Ramsay, none of it.
He lists the monsters that took his place. He believes he could have saved her from the horrors of the world. He views himself as a failed protector, trapped by the what-ifs of a hypothetical past. This physical stage direction is monumental. Sansa reaches out and touches the scarred, violent hand of a killer. To understand this, we turn to psychiatrist Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. In his landmark 2014 book, The Body Keeps the Score, he discusses the concept of somatic empathy, the ability to use physical touch to communicate safety to a traumatized nervous system. In Season 2, Sansa recoiled from Sandor's touch. Now, she initiates it. She is physically soothing the monster.
Without Littlefinger and Ramsay and the rest, I would have stayed a little bird all my life.
This is the thesis statement of Sansa Stark's entire existence. In 1998, two psychological researchers, Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, published a groundbreaking study where they coined the term post-traumatic growth. It is the phenomenon where individuals who survive extreme, life-altering trauma don't just bounce back to who they were. They undergo a profound psychological transformation that makes them stronger, more decisive, and more aware. Sansa is not thanking her abusers. She is not saying the rape or the torture was a good thing. She is exhibiting supreme psychological ownership. She is telling Sandor, do not pity me. Do not feel guilty for leaving me. The fire that burned me is the same fire that forged me into the Lady of Winterfell. If you had saved me, I would still be a weak, naive child. She absolves him of his guilt, stands up, and walks away. She leaves the Hound sitting in silence, realizing that the girl he wanted to save no longer needs saving. Before we talk about the real-world lesson of this scene, we must open the books. Because the psychological bond between Sansa and the Hound is incredibly complex, and George R.R. Martin hid a massive secret inside Sansa's brain. In the television show, Sandor offers to take Sansa away. She refuses, and he leaves. But in the books, the aftermath of that night is much stranger. Months later, in A Storm of Swords and A Feast for Crows, Sansa repeatedly thinks back to that night. And she specifically remembers that before Sandor Clegane left her room, he kissed her. She vividly remembers the harsh, violent pressure of his mouth. She even keeps the blood-stained white cloak he left behind as a twisted comfort object. But here is the terrifying part. George R.R. Martin has explicitly confirmed in interviews that the kiss never happened. Sandor never kissed her. Sansa's traumatized brain completely fabricated the memory. To explain this, we look to the work of cognitive psychologist Elizabeth Loftus, who pioneered research into false memory intrusion in her 1994 book, The Myth of Repressed Memory. Loftus proved that the human brain can invent highly vivid, completely fabricated memories as a coping mechanism for severe stress. Why did Sansa's brain invent it? Because in the suffocating horror of King's Landing, surrounded by polite, smiling monsters who wanted to destroy her, Sandor Clegane was the only person who was brutally honest. He was a terrifying killer, but he was her terrifying killer. Her subconscious invented a romantic, intimate connection, a phantom kiss, to create a sense of protection that she desperately needed to survive. So when she sits across from him at this feast in Season 8, she isn't just talking to an old acquaintance. She is sitting across from the phantom savior her own mind created to endure the dark. What behavioral protocol must we extract from this interaction for our own lives? It is a stark, incredibly difficult lesson about the difference between post-traumatic growth and toxic resilience. When this episode aired, Sansa's final line caused a massive controversy. Many viewers felt the writers were implying that abuse is necessary for character development. Sansa Stark is a survivor. She used her trauma to become a brilliant, ruthless political strategist. But we must be very careful not to romanticize her pain. Society loves the narrative that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We love the idea that suffering automatically turns you into a superhero. But in the real world, trauma does not inherently make you stronger. Trauma causes nerve damage, anxiety, and deep, lasting pain. Sansa Stark did not become powerful because of Ramsay Bolton or Peter Baelish. She became powerful in spite of them. When we look at our own lives, or the lives of those we love, we must stop giving abusers credit for the resilience of their victims. The fire doesn't forge the steel simply survives the fire. Sansa took the broken pieces of her life and built a fortress out of them. But we must never forget that she deserved to build that fortress without having to be broken in the first place. Sansa Stark walked into that dark corner of the feast to perform an execution. She didn't use a sword, she used the truth. She executed the little bird. She freed Sandor Clegane from his savior complex, proving to him that he didn't fail her. By forcing him to look at the hardened, lethal woman she had become, she proved that the helpless girl from King's Landing no longer existed. Sandor spent his life believing he was a monster who scared little girls. Sansa proved that sometimes the little girls grow up and they learn how to feed the monsters to the dogs. What is your verdict on this confrontation? Was Sansa's statement a triumphant declaration of survival, or a tragic admission that her innocence was permanently destroyed? Drop your assessment in the comments below. If this psychological breakdown rewired how you interpret the trauma of Westeros, ensure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more uncompromising analysis. I'll see you in the next one.